some of our thinking. I don't know what you would suggest if we were to, we say tourism, if you were, from your experience, if there were, targeted ways that you would recommend that we ought to be, pushing out our marketing dollars, or times of the year, or if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure. I think that, certainly the goal to even things out throughout the seasons is admirable, and there are a few towns, Stowe being one, that has the ability to be as busy in the winter and fall as it is, or in the summer and fall as it is in the winter. I worked in Killington for a number of years before I came up here, and that town has exactly the opposite kind of history, and that is that they do far more skiers in the winter, but they have absolutely virtually no business in the summer. And they've tried. I mean, they work hard at it. It's the difficulty, and so trying to balance that out is certainly a challenge. What I've always found with marketing is that really looking at travel routes is a key ingredient in successful marketing. So we need to look at our corridors of Route 91, Route 89. It's amazing to me the amount of business that I see from New Jersey and Metro New York, even in northern Vermont, knowing that so many southern Vermont areas, or potentially New York, resort and tourism areas would be attractive to those people. But they seem to make the trip. But certainly, as you go down those major byways and highways, that is where the focus should be, because that is where the greatest return for your limited dollars is going to occur.
I'm going to ask you a question on a slightly different note. I sold real estate to Crooked Rule years ago in St. Albans, and for moderate homeowners, we had VHFA. I'm not sure that's around anymore, but can you talk a little bit about what there is for that kind of customer? And in a related way, we have a lot of money, and there is no budget cuts to it for the Vermont Conservation Housing, which does, of course, aside from it buys, conservation rights off land, but it also provides subsidies and stuff for housing. And can you talk about that whole, is that a problem, a solution? Where are you looking at these two things?
A lot of the funding is FHA funding at the national level or federal level. And our rural development funding as well. So there are these different pools of funds that are available. VHFA, pulls them together in our state and works with the banks to underwrite the mortgages. I think that a couple of the challenges there, and now we're talking for really first-time home buyers, very margin, lower priced properties. Is that those folks typically don't have a 20% down payment. The underwriting guideline, while the funds are there, the underwriting guidelines have become far more stringent, and as a result, people's ability to finance has been challenged or greatly reduced. If they don't have, a 20% down payment for the purchase of a property, they are looking at purchasing private mortgage insurance. One of the big challenges has been that besides the down payment and then the monthly mortgage payments, monthly tax, mortgage, and utilities, that there is this bundle of closing costs that people are required to pay at closing, and that certainly also keeps people out of being able to close the deal essentially. But the private mortgage insurance, on my understanding, is that is it's a significant addition to the cost of borrowing money. So the pools of funds are available. The underwriting guidelines have become more stringent, and probably correctly so. And the cost of borrowing, while the interest rate is down and remains historically at an incredibly low level, and I think while we'll see it bump back up a little bit, from a historic standpoint, we have years of having incredibly low interest rates available. But it's going to take being able to pull the deal together, and all these other costs are the impediments to that, I guess. The second half of your question?
The Vermont Conservation Board.
Vermont Housing Conservation Board, right. And I have to say I'm not entirely familiar with their goals and objectives. But what I do know about it is that they do purchase housing and rehab housing. I know it's costly a lot of times. You look at some of the projects that they get involved in. Their cost of construction has always seemed very high to me. I think it's because they're doing a lot of rehab work, probably. There may be mitigation of asbestos or lead or what have you. So there's they're taking on bigger projects. But the question, I guess, would then be: is that a better approach from a policy standpoint, or is finding ways to get the marketplace to provide that housing, in an unsubsidized way that would be more traditional? And I don't know the answer to that question, quite honestly. I think it's probably some of both.
Thinking about if there were a tax on those services for that appraiser or something like that, what would be the impact? And I don't know what an appraiser might be, $500, something like that. And so for a 5% tax, it might be $25 extra.
Right.
So, and then we could look at that whole chart and we could plug in the real estate commission and see how much that was of the pie chart. And I think we'd see that the real estate commission is the largest, by far, chunk of that pie. So maybe there's a solution in there.
Well, I mean, the solution is that that the property owner will pay that tax.
No, if you're talking about reducing commissions on a fee for service basis, it'd be fine if you did enough transactions to make that a viable alternative in Vermont. One of the challenges you have here, and it becomes harder and harder every day, when you look, for instance, at the second home market, specifically in those areas where 80% or more of the homes are second home owners, the time on market there has gone from about 140 days up to about 440 days, in that range. Now, what seems to be a disproportionate level of commission for that, in that same time period, my company will burn annually on advertising, maintaining offices, communications, supporting business activities, paying salaries to 3 secretaries, paying the guy to shovel our steps, paying the guy to move the snow out of our driveway and plow and mow our lawn during the summertime. Roughly $200,000 to $250,000 per year. Now, our income has been reduced by 50%. So even though out of each discrete sale that commission seems very high, in the aggregate, nobody's getting rich in Vermont as a real estate broker. I can assure you. It's now a vow of poverty, but it's not the short path to the billionaires club. It takes a long time. It takes an enormous amount of effort. The requirements, the liabilities, the potential for lawsuits, things like that. Our company has never lost a lawsuit, and we have been essentially attached, and that kind of attorney attaches the phone book to lawsuit principal, to several different lawsuits. And it has cost us $120,000 simply as our out-of-pocket cost, irrespective of our E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance, to essentially defend ourselves. So there's some enormous cost, associated with our business. I guess it's a long way of saying we sing for our supper every day and every night. The one thing that, we can look at in all of these processes that is, I think, I don't know, it's kind of hard to speak to a meaningful way to impact the bottom line in that process. On the top line, to grow the top line, for instance, to be able to attract and to turn over more second homes, we do need to look at property taxes. I've got people in Windsor County who are paying $50,000 to $100,000 in property taxes. Now, it may well be that they can afford to write that check, and it may well be if they can't sell their home that they're going to be stuck there writing that check ad infinitum. But what has happened is that people who look at Vermont's tax policy will look at a listing, they'll look at those property taxes, and they'll see that they're heavily weighted towards second home ownership in these communities, and given the fact that those are generally the more expensive properties, that's certainly probably true. But the problem is that these people create a huge net benefit to us. Essentially we plow their roads, and in many instances that's all you get from those people. That's all the services you provide to those people. So when you look at the impact of that, irrespective of the last recession, if you combine the sales, the unit sales from 08, 09, and 10 throughout the entire state of Vermont, it takes the product of those 3 years of sales to just shade to the sales that occurred only in 2005 and 2004 as distinct sales groups. So, people are voting with their pocketbook, or they're staying out of here, and the people who are here feel very disconnected, very disenfranchised by the process, especially with some of these people who look at the fact that we've got a 10 or 11 to 1 student ratio, and then they're going back home to Massachusetts or wherever, and they have to, they're sending their kids to school where you've got a 16 or 17 to 1 student ratio. So, some of those hard numbers are really hurting our ability to compete, and we are competing on discretionary dollars. The internet is out there, putting us in front of the entire world every day, and people are looking and shopping elsewhere.
It's a very competitive environment out there. It's hard for us to compete in, and frankly, we seem to be losing or holding even the best. Who's winning?
I think for years you looked at places like Arizona, Nevada, California, and Florida. You said these guys are the winners, and now, as the economy has turned around, what did they really win? Because they obviously couldn't support the housing, the housing stock that they were selling at that point in time. I think today, who's the winner today is really...
Or tomorrow.
Tomorrow would be...
Who's the competition right now? And you say people are on the internet and
sure.
looking out there. Who are you looking at?
Well, as far as competition, there are a number of states, Colorado being one of them. Certainly North Carolina is highly competitive, although they're dealing with some of the same challenges that we are. You've got some coastal areas as well. Sunbelt is pretty badly beat up, but they're still selling a lot of housing, and the market collapse in Arizona and Florida has lowered the cost of acquisition of property there.
But in your minds, what are the factors that contributed to that, or why?
Yeah, if I may. It has a lot to do with the way houses were financed in Vermont. I think New England in general, very pragmatic borrowers. But I think if we really delved into it, the reality is we were not a big enough marketplace to become a really good target for subprime lending. It wasn't profitable enough for them, or it was rather more profitable in other parts of the country. The amount of properties that do have mortgages on them and the amount of equity that people have in houses in Vermont is much greater than many other parts of the country. So it provided some stability.